Welcome to what do we call this again, Charlie?
It's kind of a meeting of the minds, but it's also, we called it a joint venture, and also like we called it a meeting of executives or something like that. But joint venture.
Joint venture is the joint venture of the Motern Media Infomercial Podcast and the ShockMarathons podcast. Charlie and I are here to pick the brain of a legendary man of letters, if you will, Will Sloan.
Well, that's I cannot even begin to live up to that title, but thank you.
Well, do you consider yourself a man of letters?
Oh, I would love to be a man of letters. I don't know if I qualify, but I don't know if anybody qualifies, but I would like to be. Yeah.
I think you're well on your way.
To be a man of letters, is it teaching and writing, or poetry, or
certainly? I think you have to be an essayist of some kind.
An essayist. Okay.
Perhaps you would have to make your living entirely as a writer. I don't know what qualifies as a man of letters.
Put out a pamphlet.
Yes.
I love pamphlets. They hit us with that. The common sense was like, you had to know that in 5th grade.
Yeah.
They made sure no, it wasn't a book though. It was a pamphlet.
And to this day, it's the only pamphlet I can name.
It's a great pamphlet. Oh, in terms of pamphlets, yes.
I think whenever I think man of letters, I think Samuel Johnson. I think he's the epitome of the man of letters. Charlie?
Yeah, it almost implies, I guess, if you're thinking of that, like a certain way of living too. Like you can't be too boring and just learned. You got to be like out there in the world and processing things and giving your view on it. Hey, you're kind of a man of letters, Will.
Like you would be a public intellectual as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's a title I would love.
Oh yeah.
Do you go to a lot of dinner parties, Will?
I mean, no more than the usual amount. I don't know if I go to a lot of dinner parties. I
imagine you like pontificating to a crowd of I'm going to use the word erudite people. Did I use that properly? I know you know.
Well, you certainly did. But Matt, I would say that you're as much a man of letters and a public intellectual as anyone, because you and Charlie here you've written books. Matt, you have a podcast where you have a worldview and a philosophy that you articulate every week. You both are masters of many media.
There's a certain, maybe a cosmopolitan quality though that I lack. I'm here in the basement. I don't get out much. I think of Will Sloan as just a man about Toronto, offering a witty insight after witty insight. Like how do you maintain such
how do I do it?
Yeah. Not in a dinner party at a salon.
Salon.
Man, yeah. I don't know. The inspiration just flows through me, But you're right, Matt, because when I think of your brand, like you're somebody who like I don't know if cosmopolitan is exactly it. You're more like somebody who like you're in your basement, you and the inspiration just kind of flows through you like without necessarily needing to like go out to the big urban hubs and exchange ideas with the luminaries of the day. You're you're a self-made, self-fulfilling organism.
Let me tell you a secret here, Will. I long to go to one of these dinner parties, and I'm sure upon going to one, the whole time I'd be really mad and be like, they're not talking about me enough. This is, and I'd interpret everything as like a slight against me, right? Charlie, imagine, Charlie, how much.
What about the menu, Farley?
Oh, the menu would be a major problem too.
I mean, if it's not chicken fingers and ice cream, you are gonna throw a fit. You throw a purple fit.
Well, Matt, if you're ever in Toronto, be sure to come by. I'll curate a guest list that is exclusively people who have seen your movies and are familiar with your music.
Yeah, do people? So yeah, I'm not part of any world really, but I have this vision of that somewhere people are having like really intellectual discussions at dinner parties, And I'm angry that I'm not invited, and then I'm angry that they wouldn't talk about me if I was invited. But it's better for me to stay down here and just to live through you. Now, what is, besides a man of letters, I mean, do you consider yourself a film critic? Did you hear me?
Yeah, you said, asked Will if he considers himself a film critic or he's an essayist and a writer.
Can you hear us, Will?
Yeah, no, I've got you now. I heard the
Okay.
last bit of what you said. You know what I would say to that? I would say that at any reputable dinner party, you know what we're talking about? We're talking about your work. So, there are the people who do the talking, and then there are the people who supply the things to talk about. And I think that's a very perfectly balanced equation.
What do you think is the current state of film criticism right now in 2020?
I think it's in some ways better than ever because there's more of it. The internet has led to this enormous flowering of many different kinds of film criticism, many different kinds of voices. Back in the old days, you would have your newspaper movie critic, and the newspaper movie critic often wouldn't have very interesting taste. It would be very mainstream.
Weren't there used to be guys on the news? I forget the New York guy's name, but there was a staff person who they would actually cut to him as if he were doing the weather, and he would just tell jokes and say what he liked, or slam a movie, or laud it to the moon, that kind of thing. I don't think that exists anymore, does it?
You may be thinking of Gene Shalit, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Is there anyone like him currently doing that?
There are some people, there are some news programs that have it, but I mean, it's the golden age of film criticism, I think, just in terms of the sheer range of it and the sheer amount available, but it's not necessarily a golden age of seeing film criticism in the mainstream media and people getting paid for it, right? Oftentimes on the news, what you'll have instead is an entertainment reporter who runs down what the new releases are and doesn't really have an opinion on them.
Yeah, like a personality, who's got a flavor that has been out there for a decade plus,
But I mean, there's because of the internet, there is if you're able to find them, because there's just so many of them, it's hard to sort the wheat from the chaff sometimes. But there are many different, from people who have either some people have a class-based lens, some people have a race lens, some people have a queer lens, some people have so many perspectives that were not, the standard perspective that was in the newspapers 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I offer none of those things, by the way.
We were talking, do you love Cisco and Ebert, or do you hate them, or is it a love-hate relationship? What is your stance on on those guys? Because you definitely have a lot of hilarious, and I love when you did their theme song, by the way. But tell us your thoughts on Cisco and Ebert.
That was cool.
Yeah, I think it would probably fall under love-hate at this time. I mean, I definitely grew up with them. I think they, in my head, set the template of what film critics are. But I don't know. Have you guys ever seen? You can go on YouTube and see these amazing compilations of when they used to have a segment called Dog of the Week, where on the end of every episode they would have a dog who would come in, and the dog would sit on their lap, and they would say, well, here's Sparky the Wonder Dog to say what the worst movie currently in release is. And they would go to a grindhouse in Chicago and just pick the lowest hanging fruit. And so they'd be like, boy, I saw one this week, David Cronenberg's The Brood. And, they didn't call it David Cronenberg's The Brood. They didn't know who David Cronenberg was.
Oh.
Or they would be like, we saw one this week called Ms. 45. I mean, they would talk about a lot of bad movies too, but their perspective is very kind of, middle class, middle brow. And I think there are limits to the usefulness of that perspective.
Yeah.
There are a lot of ShockMarathon titles would be in those dog of the week roundups.
Yeah, so like you said, it's amazing that there was a time, I feel like every local news station had, like Charlie said, one of those entertainment and it seemed that was their full-time job. Like their full-time job was seeing movies and doing like a 2-minute segment every Friday reviewing them. And who knows, maybe they were making money elsewhere, but it's like that's crazy that was ever a thing. But it's also crazy.
And also, like, what exactly is their qualification for making these judgments, right?
Yeah,
like,
and they're so bland.
Like, well, I'm the expert, and I'm going to tell you if this is good or not, because it was all Consumer Report stuff. I mean, the best criticism isn't Consumer Report stuff. The best criticism is, I don't know, something else. Like, you can't really do a Consumer Report review for a subjective work of art the way that you would do a Consumer Report review of like a new car.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no one size fits all approach.
What is your day job, if you don't mind talking about it?
Oh yeah, I work in communications at a university in Toronto called York University.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And
cool.
then
and by the way, it is super fun to be in communications during a pandemic. Let me tell you, just a barrage of news and announcements that you have to keep up on every day.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then when you're not working, it seems like you're constantly coming out with material. Like, what's the average week like? How many podcasts do you put out in a week?
I have 2 podcasts, which is like arguably too many, but I mean, I am talking to you guys who like invented the concept of doing extracurricular work.
So you've got the Important Cinema Club,
and the other one's called Michael and Us.
Michael and Us. Okay, cool.
And it's more of a political thing.
Okay, cool. I was, and also in terms of what Farley was just saying about all the work you do, I was listening to your guys' Robot Monster podcast, and you were just casually mentioning like, yeah, I watched like 4 of his movies in prep for this. I was like, wow, that's nice. Because even for when we do our little movie review thing, for us to get that one in thoroughly and like know what we're going to talk about, it takes, it's a little bit of a homework assignment, but I was impressed.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Tucker is easy because I don't think he ever made a movie over 70 minutes.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones are a little harder, and trying to balance all that with the other obligations of life, as I'm sure you know, can be a challenge. But I don't know.
Doing good, man.
I don't have any kids.
That Phil Tucker, I didn't know about that book either. That really lengthy book that you guys talked about. It's like, wow, there's a several 100-page long book about.
It's so good. It answers every possible question you could have about Phil Tucker.
I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, because it's not you're not just hitting record and chatting for an hour. I mean, for every episode of the Important Cinema Club, you're watching minimum 3 movies, I would guess, based on listening to you.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. Is this an intervention? Are you trying to talk me out of this lifestyle?
No, I love it because it's the difference between actively and passively taking in a work of art. It's not just sitting on the couch and hitting play and whatever. It's like, I mean, do you often take notes?
Yeah, I do often take notes, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you're into it.
Great.
You're researching the person. You're going deep, and similarly, like with Michael and Us, you watch. It's one movie every episode, or what?
Yeah, it's one movie every episode, and it's a little bit less. It's a little bit less rigorous than the other one, because the other one, on Important Cinema Club, there were a lot of like career encapsulating episodes.
Yeah. You don't want to mess that up. You're laying down the law for like that episode that you're doing on that guy. So you guys, you deliver. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
When you were in Impossible Horror, tell me about that experience. Was it like a day's worth of filming, or more than that, or what?
Yeah, it was a day's worth of filming. I mean, to those listening who don't know, Impossible Horror is Justin DeClue's movie, my podcast partner. And yeah, I do have a role in that. I have an IMDb page because of it. It was just, one day, but it was very fun to contribute to it. It was fun to see my face on the big screen when it premiered.
What about just seeing Justin in action? Have you seen him in action? Had you seen him in action much prior to that?
No, that was the first time. And I got to say, when I finally saw Impossible Horror, when he played it at the Toronto After Dark Film Festival, I really liked it. I thought it was, what I had heard about Impossible Horror was that he'd had a hard time filming it. Like, the leading lady broke her leg on the first day of filming, and so she had to be replaced. And it definitely seemed like his Fitzcarraldo, just in terms of everything that went wrong. But I was kind of blown away by it when I finally saw it, which is a relief, because there's nothing worse than like seeing your friend's movie and not liking it.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you before I forget, Will. Is that okay, Farley?
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, like, I know all your reviews and stuff, and are you tempted to write screenplays or fiction, or do you? And I didn't ask you that when I've talked to you before.
No, not really. I don't know if my brain really works that way.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you were like, oh, he's tinkering with something, or you have this thing you wanted to do. You did mention when you were a kid, though, you had some yeah.
I definitely did like write stuff when I was a kid. But I don't know. I feel like I've either lost that muscle or lost that urge. Yeah, I don't know.
Sure. I get you.
I wouldn't necessarily stand by that stuff I wrote as a kid either.
But you write some pretty extensive pieces, essays, or just critical analysis. You wrote something really great about us. I read it daily.
Oh.
It just strikes you. You're like, I think I'll write an all-encompassing piece on. And what was the one, Charlie, we were talking about? I already forgot. We were talking about it before.
Well, the video store one was.
Oh,
really
the video
cool
store one, yeah.
We've done stuff like that in our books, exactly similar, just kind of a mixture of personal experience and overview of the industry, kind of together. Developments and how it feels to you, and that was cool. And hearing about the stuff that you were into, and I feel like a lot of people who are super into movies, you hear about them. They're going to video stores and being intrigued by the weird covers. And they're the ones who either rent that, or they're reading a book about movies and there's a title that they never heard of and they write it down or they underline it. And then they go and they take the steps to get that movie under their belt. And I felt like that was something I got out of your essay.
Did you guys have like a canon of titles when you were kids that like the box, like you would see the box every time and you would either be scared by it or repulsed in some way by it, and it would sort of like become this whole thing in your head, and it would maybe you weren't even scared by it, but just sort of confused by it.
Yeah,
didn't understand
for years.
What were those movies for you?
American Gothic. It was for me. I don't know. Just like I walked by the American Gothic box, hundreds of times, and it's like they're like doing a play on that farmer painting, and and then we finally saw it, and I was like, I mean, like 20 years. 20 years later, and it
never lives up to it. Yeah.
Very disappointing.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie. Yeah,
seeing those, it's like the physical object is like a totem there that lives in that place in the store, and you can visit it or not. You could rent it or not, but you're gonna like walk by it when you go. For me, Sleepaway Camp scared the heck out of me. The bloody sneaker, and there's a magic to an illustrated cover, and in my opinion, just the perspective being different, and just the artist, that level of remove, that it's not just photographic. Those were the ones that kind of lived in my mind. But I was also scared of all the Friday the 13th, just the way it was written.
Oh, for me, Nightmare on Elm Street was a really scary one. Just everything about Freddy Krueger, the fact that he was a burn victim, the fact he had like claws for hands or whatever. And on the back cover of, I think, the first one, there was a picture of him on fire, and that just absolutely haunted and terrified me for years.
When Will, when you're if you don't have an assignment for a movie for one of your podcasts and you're gonna watch a movie, do you like nowadays it's streaming and oftentimes I find myself flipping just from cover to cover to cover and to the point of and then just saying forget it or watching a movie I've already watched. Like I'm just like I can't take this. I'm gonna watch, Lost in America again. Yeah.
I think we all feel that because, like, if you're doing that, it's maybe like 9:00 at night, and you're trying to think, well, I'm gonna squeeze one in before I fall asleep. But then because you're doing that, your selection like becomes momentous. Like, okay, well, I only have this one shot at it, so I gotta find just the right thing.
Yeah, there's always in the back of your head the chance that there's something else that's at your fingertips that you could be watching instead with your limited time. If you went to the video store and got it, you were in that was your boat. You were sailing with that sucker, and you had to watch it you had a time limit as well. So two things that were key to getting that movie under your belt. You paid, and it had to be back in a day or two maybe. And so awesome. Yeah.
And I would finish the movies from the video store because like it was the only option, whereas so frequently I'll bail on a movie in 20 minutes in, because it's like I don't know, just because there's too many options. I guess it's I wonder what the new generation that never had video stores feels about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you can look to the generation before of people like the Joe Dante era, where he'll say, "Okay, I was dropped off at the theater." I paid my money. That was what I was watching. That could, arguably, you're getting the movie. You're watching it in a special space with a group, So you've got that even maybe above the VHS era, unless you were watching it at a sleepover or something.
Joe Dante would also collect 16 millimeter prints, which is like, a mode of watching movies that's completely like, completely beyond any like I could imagine, saving up money like $100 or whatever it would have cost for a 16 millimeter print, and that becoming you're only like you own a movie finally, and it's the only movie you own, and it becomes so special and so momentous for you.
Oh yeah.
Are there what are movies that you keep going back to, Will?
Oh God. Yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of them, and now I'm like totally blanking.
Of course,
okay, the first one that comes to mind is Drunken Master with Jackie Chan. I could watch that, any day of the week. There are a lot of Marx Brothers movies I could watch a lot. I think like when it comes to like comfort watches, there are certain genres that come to mind, like 70s kung fu movies, like any like 70s kung fu movie that is ripping off Jackie Chan but doesn't necessarily star him, I'm going to enjoy.
That's cool. Let me ask you one other question. In your essay, you mentioned that you wanted to watch Batman and it was rented. Do you have an affinity for that Adam West, not just the movie, but his portrayal in the series?
Oh man, do I ever? I mean,
yes.
that TV series was like, I can't even summon the words to explain how important it was to me at the time. Watched it every day. And another thing about how culture and entertainment consumption has changed is like that played on TV in my town every day for about 2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden it wasn't on anymore. They just stopped playing the reruns, and then I probably didn't see it again for another 15 years after that. Like there was just no way to see it, and it felt like mourning a member of the family. I did talk to Adam West on the phone once, about 10 years ago, and it was for an interview, and I told him, I said, I'm sure you're tired of hearing this, but thanks for being my boyhood hero. And he said, "Oh, I never get tired of hearing that."
Yeah.
And, I just about cried. It was just an incredibly emotional experience.
Yeah.
What are the details?
I read Back to the Batcave, and I also read Burt Ward's book. Have you ever read that?
Oh no.
Burt Ward's book is called Boy Wonder: My Life in Tights, and it's just like very salacious. It's nothing but it's nothing but like kiss and tell stuff. So if you want to learn about that side of Batman, highly recommended. Like it's as if it was written by a guy who was like, yeah, okay, I was Robin, I wasn't Batman, but don't make any mistake, I got women too.
Wow.
What was the interview? Why were you interviewing Adam West?
Oh, he was coming to Fan Expo, which is the Toronto equivalent of Comic-Con, about 10 years ago. Do you
drop some more names? Who else have you interviewed?
Oh God, who else have I? Let me see if I can. The first person I ever interviewed was a guy called Paul Marco, who was in all the Ed Wood movies. He played Kelton the cop in Plan 9 from Outer Space. Wow. Do you guys know of Kelton the cop? Paul Marco has a really funny backstory because in the 80s, like he was a guy who was part of Ed Wood's entourage who like really wanted to be a star, and I guess it didn't work out for him. So he went on to a career working in the prop department at Paramount. Very solid career, nice pension. And then in the 80s, he was working on Joe Dante's Explorers, and he heard that Joe Dante was a fan of like B and exploitation movies and said, hey, do you know the Ed Wood movies? Do you know Kelton the Cop? He said, oh yeah, I know Kelton the Cop. I'm Kelton the Cop. And Joe Dante said, oh wow, you're a cult star. You should do something with that. You should go on the convention circuit. And so Paul Marco then quit his job and he invested all of his savings into like reviving the Kelton brand.
Oh no.
He printed a bunch of like I Love Kelton the Cop t-shirts and buttons and balloons, and he started the Paul Marco fan club. Which I don't know if anybody ever actually
Does this end well or no?
Well, I mean, he lived for much longer after that, so I guess he found a way to survive.
Okay.
But for a long time he was trying to like get a like big screen Kelton reboot back, or like Kelton game show or something, and I really mourn that it didn't happen.
Did he work with Conrad Brooks later in life?
So I'm always wondering about this because Conrad Brooks also hit the convention circuit and was the other one of those guys who really tried to cash in on that, but I don't know if they ever actually appeared together. And I kind of feel like they didn't like each other. That's the general sense I get. Yeah. I think they might have regarded each other as like competition.
Yeah, I guess so. Have you seen Jangel and some of those like later ones?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen Jangel. which is as low as you can get.
Yeah. Oh, he printed out a still image at one point there and like zooms into it when that happened.
Jangel 2, because he couldn't get the guy who played Jangel in the first movie back, so he just had a still image of him that he.
I'm so happy you've seen that, because that's a good one to when I'm watching something. I'm like, well, how does this rate against Jangel? Usually favorably.
I actually spoke to Conrad Brooks once too, because when I was 16 years old, I was so like high on having talked to Paul Marco. I thought, okay, who can I talk to next? I know, I'm going to talk to Conrad Brooks. And he was trying really hard to like sell me his movies, and I was 16. I didn't have any money, but he was like, yeah, I'll give you an interview. But have you heard of this movie I made called Ironbound Vampire? Yeah, it's me and Dolores Fuller, and we're together for the first time in 40 years, and so I'll put you down for that one. And also Hillbilly Monster. Hillbilly Monster's a good one. Eventually he got me to commit to sending him $100 for all these movies, which I didn't do.
There's a certain desperation to that. That's it's just on his part, it's kind of sad. But
kind of cool that it was still actually like he came from the era of these completely pre-video era, and then he's like, you know what? Some of those guys, I'm gonna get a computer. I'm gonna figure it out, or get a local kid to help me. I'm gonna just get a cheap camera, like Ted B. Michaels. I'm just gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, and Jangel too. It's like my memory of that one is most of the movie just consists of like him talking to people, and he'll just like park the camera down, and like he'll basically just be feeding them the lines from off camera, and then they'll say the lines, but there's no reverse shot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, Conrad Brooks, God love him. Rest in peace.
You seem to like these larger than life characters in the history of film. Orson Welles, Bogdanovich, just these characters. Am I right in thinking that? And if so, tell us more about it.
Yeah, I suppose I do like them. I think a lot of like, I don't know, male cinephiles gravitate towards those guys. Like, when you're I don't know if this is a particularly like boy thing, but like when you're discovering movies as a teenager, and you're getting into the idea of a director, you like those guys who like put their stamp on every frame of the movie. You like those guys who are, really swinging their thing around and showing you that they're the boss. So it's those guys like Tarantino or Wes Anderson or Orson Welles are the ones who tend to hook like teenage cinephiles.
And there's just something hilarious about them too, especially Orson.
Well, yeah.
I mean, there's this one story where Orson, Bogdanovich asked Orson, or Bogdanovich said something like, I don't like one of your movies, and Orson was like, of course, that movie stinks, and then like a few hours later, Orson was like sulking in the corner, and he was like,
well, because Bogdanovich wanted to keep talking about why it was bad. And then after a while, Wells was like, no, actually, I do like that movie. I was just trying to please you.
Yeah, that's such a great story.
Yeah.
Just like, because they're like children,
Yeah. Well, it's fun. It is funny that in the case of Wells, that like somebody who is capable of making Citizen Kane could also just be, the most pathetic and self-destructive man possible. Just somebody with like a trail of broken relationships and hurt feelings in his wake.
Yeah, and oftentimes I'm just like, Charlie's gonna come back in a second. By the way, we lost him, but it's like he's whining about the studio took my movie and messed with it, and all this stuff. But frankly, it's like, can you blame them? Like you're making them spend all this money. You're being difficult with them. It's just when you're spending the studio's money, you kind of like forfeit the right to get outraged when they want.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
When I was younger, I definitely kind of bought the line on Orson Welles that he was a misunderstood and, terminally bad luck, genius, kind of hook, line, and sinker. But there was a book out a couple of years ago about the making of The Other Side of the Wind, where it was talking about how like he shot that movie from 1970 to like, I think he was still shooting it in 1976. Yeah. And then by the time the Shah of Iran was deposed, who had put money into it, like it was 1979. So he had 9 years to finish that movie. And I think at that point, maybe it's his problem.
Yes, it's his problem. And it just bugs me, that whole thing. And I would like to see more directors put their money where their mouths are, because they're more than willing to complain about the studio, but it seems they're less than willing to just make the movie themselves, Like,
so I'm because I'm working on a book about you, I'm very much like immersed in your words and thoughts right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I've just been transcribing the part about Freaky Farley and Manch Vegas, and it's interesting how you seem to very much like build a lot of your movies around like the art of the possible. It's like, okay, we don't want to have too many scenes that have more than 5 people in them. Like the movies get structured around that. Sort of like, have you ever seen that movie, The Five Obstructions, the Lars von Trier movie?
No.
Oh, okay. You would really enjoy it, I think. Lars von Trier got this. he got this filmmaker who I guess is a renowned filmmaker in Denmark, and he asked him to remake a short film he made 30 years ago, but remake it 5 times, each with a different obstruction. And so one of them is like, he can't do it with any shots that last more than 2 seconds. And another one is he has to do it, but he has to have just like a black backdrop through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you see that the guy, like each movie, one after another, is great. Like he rises to the challenge.
It's the limitations. Well, one thing that bugged me about Grindhouse is that they faked a lot of those limitations. You know, they had a huge budget.
Oh, yeah, they had every resource in the world to make that movie. Yeah,
right. Like a more honest thing to do would to be just make it on the cheap. You know. And then you'd still end up having a missing reel. But you'd really have a missing reel. You wouldn't just fake it, you know?
Yeah, I also would have liked Grindhouse a bit better if they had actually like the Tarantino segment in that is so much like a Tarantino movie. It has all those scenes where they're just talking very loquaciously about movies, and it's like it would be nice if like they actually committed to the bit a little bit more and made real genre movies, not these kind of postmodern winking things.
Have you gotten, other than us, do you get a lot of feedback from filmmakers that you've discussed?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't happen that often because I think like obviously Tom Cruise isn't going to respond to us after we do a Tom Cruise episode. Although there was one case, we did a filmmaker named Lizzie Borden who made a small number of movies. One of them is kind of a classic called Born in Flames, but her last movie was called Love Crimes. I don't know if you've heard of it. It is an erotic thriller starring Sean Young, and it, more or less tanked her career. Got a bunch of Razzie nominations. Just a total disaster. And we talked about it, and she reached out because she wanted to talk about the experience of making it. And so we did an interview with her, and we found out that it was a terrible experience because the producer on that movie was Harvey Weinstein, and he did every Harvey Weinstein trick in the book making that movie. Just a very awful, toxic presence. And then after it didn't work out, he more or less was able to blacklist her. So that was, probably the most rewarding experience of having a filmmaker reach out.
And how do people find your stuff, Will? Do you think they're just searching for the titles they like or the movies they like, or they get recommended? Is it a little bit of everything? I don't know. I
think it's a little bit of everything. We've definitely had a lot of people who have come onto it by searching a filmmaker's name. I mean, I think we are the only people who have ever done a Phil Tucker podcast now. So, if anybody searches Phil Tucker's name, a lot of it's been word of mouth. I think people see it on social media as well if they follow one of us.
Do you like when people recommend movies to you?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes it becomes no, just in general, just because it's what you do. I don't know if you're getting it too often, and it's just all right, easy. It becomes a chore too when once it's been recommended to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Every now and then somebody will suggest an episode topic that we take. I can't think of one now, but I know it's happened.
You have a legitimate amount of supporters on Patreon. Does that make you happy?
It makes me happy, but it's also because I mean, of course, it makes me happy because it's nice to be validated.
Yeah.
But it adds pressure because then you actually have to produce the content.
Right, because especially the bonus stuff.
Yeah,
you promised it.
Yeah.
Have you ever been late, and have people given you trouble?
I mean, we've been late all the time, but we do fulfill the mandate of you will get a certain number of things in a certain amount of time. It may not always be on Monday, but you're gonna get it.
Is Michael Moore aware of you?
If he is, I've heard nothing. I hope he is. He seems like the kind of guy who would have a Google alert.
I feel, I mean, much like that Orson Welles story we were just saying, these larger than life Hollywood big shots are really just like have very thin skin and are incredibly self-obsessed. So I bet a lot of them have been listening to you. Charlie, what was your thing?
I was just gonna ask, do you have a bunch of like Canadian gems or favorites that like maybe somebody like Farley or me we don't really know about, but it's like some stuff that's special to you that might not have gotten a wide release here?
Yeah. Okay. Let me think about that. I don't always have the most instant recall, but I mean, I'm sure you guys know Things, right? The classic.
Yes.
Yeah. The classic Amber Lynn movie. One that Intervision put out. Okay, two that the company Intervision put out that if you haven't seen them, I think you would like. One of them's called Phobe, the xenophobic. Yeah, sorry, Phobe, the xenophobic experiments.
Yeah,
I don't know why
one.
the word xenophobic's in the title, but that's this one that was like made by like a crew of hosers at a Niagara Falls like public access TV station, and it's like, what if a public access station tried to make Terminator 2? And it's very charming.
Yeah.
Intervision put out another one called City in Panic, which is kind of like a grimy. I'm actually hesitant to recommend it because like it involves like a serial killer who's targeting the gay community in Toronto. So it's like definitely problematic stuff. But it's like it's a grimy and I think kind of compelling movie that has a lot of like shots of nocturnal Toronto in the 1980s. And hang on, I have one more recommendation that I just need to look up what it's called. It stars a guy called Lazar Rockwood, and it's called, I think, Beyond the 12th Door. Beyond the Seventh Door is what it's called. And Lazar Rockwood, he's kind of like the thinking man's Tommy Wiseau. He's just like a really strange looking guy with an indeterminate Eastern European accent. And it's this like thriller set at Casa Loma, which is a tourist trap in Toronto. It's like a castle that some rich guy 120 years ago built. And now, school groups go there. And it's like, one of those stories where it's like a guy and a girl are trapped in this haunted house and they have to go through this like obstacle course to get out. But it's great because of Lazar Rockwood, who like, I mean, words can't describe what sort of a screen presence he is. And the woman in it is just an ordinary woman.
Cool.
Do you think there's a wrong way to enjoy a movie? Like you bring up Tommy Wiseau, and like some people seem to be like aggressively, almost like mean about how much they like that, what they think of that movie. And then other people seem to have a more lighthearted spirit for it. Do you think about stuff like that?
There are ways that like I personally agree with and don't agree with, but I mean, as the master Wiseau says, at a screening of The Room, you can laugh, you can cry, you can express yourself, but please don't hurt anyone. And I think that's my attitude. It's like, enjoy something like The Room. You can enjoy it however you want, but like, don't be mean to Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah.
He's just, if you see him in person, just like be nice to him. Sometimes, sometimes you go to those screenings where people are like trying to take the piss out of the guy. And that can be a very unpleasant experience.
Totally. Yep.
And so where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Etobicoke, which is a suburb of Toronto.
And then, now you live in Toronto?
Yes. Now I live downtown. I've gone a full 12 kilometers or however far it is. And, did you see at any point before you started doing it? Did you see yourself as an becoming an influential podcaster and writer? Well, I certainly aspired to be.
Okay, but that was when was that in the cards for you're 15? You said someday I want to be a movie podcaster, or did it just kind of happen?
Well, I mean, there was no such thing as a podcast at the time.
Okay,
but
yeah.
I definitely wrote for my school newspaper. I had a column in the local Etobicoke community paper, the one that you get free in your in your mailbox.
What were you
I was
writing
definitely
about?
Somebody who like wanted to be seen and read and like
Cool.
In that what were you writing about every week in the local paper?
Oh, I had a kind of like Andy Rooney-ish column where it was just like my comical perspective as a wisecracking teen,
So not just on movies.
No, not just on movies. No, I was an all-purpose public intellectual, to use that phrase again.
You really are. You're a man of letters. You were a teen of letters. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
A teen of letters. That's awesome. Did you get any feedback from those days? You ruffle any feathers?
I used to occasionally get recognized at the grocery store. I mean, I cannot overstate that paper, the Etobicoke Guardian. It went to every mailbox.
Yeah.
So people did read it. I don't think anybody remembers it now, though. I don't know if I still have the same status in Etobicoke.
Charlie,
did you have your photo?
That was my question. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had my photo. Yeah.
This is amazing. That's so cool.
Not to knock you down a peg, but if it were a sketch. If it were a sketch, it would have been that even better. But no, not a sketch.
I agree.
You'll get there. You'll get there. and then, at what point did you say I'm starting up a podcast?
Oh well, that came about. I guess it was at the end of 2015. I feel like it was Justin's idea, first of all, and I was at the time feeling, I think, just sort of generally frustrated. I didn't feel like I was like. I don't think I was happy with the work I was doing. I think I was like, and so I think I was just sort of like up for anything. And at the time, at the very start of it, I think I felt a little bit embarrassed to have a podcast. Like the idea of like two white guys talking about movies seemed a little bit cliche. And now, here we are, 4.5 years later, and it's come to define my life.
And then, were there any? Justin told us it was really just like a slow and steady climb. But do you remember any moments where you're like, "Whoa, this is people are actually listening and paying attention"?
Well, I remember about 2 months after we started, it was my birthday, and I saw that like friends of mine were sharing the podcast on social media, saying, "Oh, hey, and Will has a really good podcast too," which. Was sort of an indication. Oh, I didn't know they were listening to it.
Well, I had people.
Maybe it's coming off okay.
I had people that I knew, a couple people I knew in life, and a couple people I knew online, who, when after you did the episode about our movies, reached out to me, and like I didn't know that they were listening to you guys. That it was like, oh, you listen to them, cool. So like it's getting out there.
Well, that's great to hear, because it oftentimes still feels like a message in a bottle, like you do it and then you do the next one. And it's not like no one, I mean, to answer the question you raised earlier, I don't think there's ever like one particular moment. Like if there is a big break moment, I don't think it has happened yet.
Yeah.
Or perhaps it may never happen. I'm glad to hear though that people reached out to you about that podcast episode, because when we did that episode, I think we consciously like timed it sort of late enough into the podcast's existence where it's like, well, we don't want to blow this topic too early on. Like we want to use our power for good, and we want to like accumulate like a small, accumulate a certain number of listeners. Before we do this one,
I'm gonna quote you on my gravestone. I'm gonna write "blandly handsome," Will Sloan. That's how you described me in that episode, which is awesome. You're like, well, Farley has he's blandly handsome, so he's got a certain movie star quality.
I think I compared you to Brendan Fraser too.
That's great. Yeah.
I listened to that episode again not too long ago when I was working on the book, and what surprised me about the episode is I think I'm a little more reserved than I would be now, because I had seen River Beast and then I watched Freaky Farley and Local Legends, and I think I was so like taken aback by those two movies. They're similar to River Beast, but they're both like wildly different experiences. And the fact that Local Legends has you like giving your home phone number in it, like it took me a while to just like it's so unusual. It took me a while to just even like process it.
Well, definitely I've seen, because I go to Letterboxd at least once a day to check reviews for all of our movies, and sometimes I'll tell Charlie about it. But I see a couple people talking about Freaky Farley being like, "Whoa, this is kind of dark compared to," because a lot of people come in via River Beast, and and they don't know the depths of our darkness, Charlie.
Oh yeah, or our parody comedy art house, the real like Messenger, like the real dark old stuff that we just chuckle and laugh. The harder than any of our comedies, we laugh at our weird art house.
Will, we got.
And we're like, who would watch this? How are we making this right now? It is so insane, and that's like fun for us.
We're finishing up on Metal Detector Maniac, black and white, and the next movie, black and white again. Will, so we mean business.
That's amazing. I fully support that.
I
love that too, because you guys have more fans than you've ever had before, and now it's like we're gonna give them a black and white movie. It's like we're not. It's like it's not the part in your career like where okay, we've made all those underground movies and now we're gonna make Hairspray and Crybaby. You know, instead we're making a black and white movie.
I don't want to give away much, and I promised Charlie I wouldn't give away much, and we can edit this out, but I'm gonna be good here, Charlie. But the movie Metal Detector Maniac is black and white, but it's kind of a comedy. The movie after that, Will, it touches on many very similar themes, but goes way darker. And I said to Charlie, basically, this is our Melinda and Melinda split up into two, into two movies. And it's like the worst idea ever to make two movies in black and white that follow through on the theme of like one of Woody Allen's least appreciated movies. It's the dumbest idea ever.
I mean, you've sold me already.
So, back. It's
so
going to be easy to film.
Oh yeah, we always say it's going to be easy to film, Will, and then we end up broken men. Tell us more about Justin, like when he was trying to finish his movie. Did you see him like slowly losing his mind?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I was very happy for him when he got accepted into Toronto After Dark, because I feel like before that he didn't necessarily have high hopes for the movie. I hope I'm not telling tales out of school here. I think it was just a very long and difficult shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know, working on a low budget with people who aren't necessarily full-time actors and just like shooting on weekends, very hard to do. And also I think Impossible Horror, like it was all shot at night too.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe wears on you or wore on him a little bit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's like filming at the ocean for Jaws, or there's like the things that are the hardest, night, sea, animals, kids, it's like the same things you always hear, and they're true.
Here's a question. Should all that matter when you're reviewing a movie? Like oftentimes there's the story of how the movie was made, and that can kind of change the way that you perceive the movie. Mm-hmm. Should that, as a critic, should that matter?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it should. I mean, what I'll say is that art doesn't exist in a vacuum. Art always has context. I actually do think there are a lot of movies where a lot of the meaning comes from the circumstances of the production. I think your movies are like that a little bit. You know, part of what's interesting about the movies is just the fact that, they are like homegrown, like community enterprises.
Yeah. No, you can't separate them, but yeah.
But some places have like a PR firm that finds the thing and promotes it. Like I guess like a No Mariachi thing where you're like, that was the thing. It's like, well, if he goes on Letterman, they're going to ask him, so you made a movie for $7,000. That's like the thing for us, since we have no budget and no one helping us and nothing, no distribution. Yeah. It's like, I mean, guess people can research it, but there's not a spin, I should say, because there's no one to do it.
I think you're right. And I think it's important to be vigilant to not let the PR company set the terms of the debate, Yeah.
Yeah. Do you get contacted from PR companies and whatnot? Do you get screeners sent to you?
Not as many as we would like, and not the kinds that we would like. Occasionally we do get contacted, just from people who I don't think have ever heard the podcast and are just like, hey, I've got this movie playing at this film festival, or my client has this movie at this film festival. If you're interested in doing any coverage of it. But we would definitely like, the nice Blu-ray companies to send us free stuff. I wouldn't say no to that.
Is Blu-ray like the last thing that people people are still into Blu-ray? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of people, but some people. For some people, it's sort of like a vinyl type thing. For insane people like me who want to own the physical copy of it.
Yeah, but that's the one. Like, no one's really collecting DVDs, it seems.
No, it's kind of a junky medium, isn't it? Like, DVDs don't look that good.
Yeah.
Did you ever have you ever watched anything on those old like they were like records, but they played video? You ever experienced that?
Oh, laser discs.
No. Before that,
other ones. Did Magnavox make it? It was it looks like a cartridge, like a video game cartridge.
I'm pretty sure it played it on a needle too. Am I right? That it played.
Yeah. It wasn't a laser. It was some kind of. You find them in pawn shops. We used to go to a pawn shop in Providence when we were in college, and they had them there, the dusty old box.
You're not talking about Betamax, are you?
No, it's like this. I'd have to look at it.
Wow, we've used up every format I know. So.
Well, Will, I got a new obsession for you. There was once a time when they put out movies on vinyl, and it's this weird thing. And like Charlie said, you can find them. Well, anyway,
I do know that a little bit because sometimes I'll be at a used record store and you'll find like an album that has like 2 episodes of the audio of Faulty Towers on it or something like that, because I guess, or like there's an album of like the best of the Tonight Show.
And it's
I guess there was no such thing as YouTube at the time.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy
That's
times.
cool.
And before we wrap this up, can you walk us through your brief friendship with Albert Brooks?
Yes. I mean, I don't know how good a story this is.
It's such a good story. Tell him, Charlie.
Okay.
Any Albert Brooks story, I'm in.
I was like followed for a couple hours on Twitter by Albert Brooks.
Now, okay, question.
Which
Let me interrupt. Did he follow you after you did that tweet about Taxi Driver? What came first?
Yes, I did the tweet about Taxi Driver. Then he followed me, which makes me wonder, like, does Albert Brooks name search?
Yeah, he does. He absolutely does.
I mean, it's overwhelming majority probably would say yes.
Unless,
I mean, because that's an amazing thing, because he's a titan of entertainment. Why would he need to name search?
Because they're all petty, pathetic people. They're like me, except successful.
So yeah, he followed me for about 2 hours, and it was me and his wife were the only 2 people he followed, and I think my head almost exploded, and like I was just overwhelmed with emotion, and I thought, well, like obviously this is a mistake, but like what if it isn't a mistake? And anyway, he very politely confirmed to me that it was a mistake. But I mean, that's nice. I got to interact with him,
That's so hilarious. Another option, though, is if someone replied to your tweet and then tagged him in the reply, perhaps?
Yeah, possibly. And if that happened, I don't know. But, maybe he was looking at my feed and, and he just accidentally pressed follow, which, itself, I mean, I think that's an incredible thing,
Yeah, what
Very
a world.
briefly.
What a world we live in. Yeah. Okay. Best Albert Brooks movie.
Oh, actually, it's hard for me to pick between Real Life, Modern Romance, and Lost in America. But I think I might lean towards Real Life. I think Real Life has a lot of big laughs in it.
It's Lost in America.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you for playing. It's Lost in America.
I was going to say Real Life. I think of Real Life all the time. He was so ahead of his time with that thing.
You
Have
kidding
you guys,
me?
by any chance, seen Looking for Comedy in the Muslim World? Because nobody likes that one, and I think it's really funny.
I want to see it, but it's like, I don't know. Basically, after Defending Your Life, I couldn't, it was just one dud after the next. And then by the time that movie came out, I was like, I'm done. Sorry, Albert. But
I mean, done in the best possible way.
I'm here to vouch for it. I think it's better than The Muse. I think it's better than Mother.
well,
Better than Django.
Better than what?
Django.
What's that?
Oh, Jan Gelb, of course. Well, I mean, very few movies are better than Jan Gelb.
Okay. But I'm sorry, Lawson. When he's talking to Gary Marshall, the Desert Inn has heart. I mean, what is better than that?
You know what? Maybe that is the best Albert Brooks movie. But then I also think of that scene in Modern Romance where he goes to the sporting goods store and he talks to Super Dave, his brother.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible scene too.
Okay, listen. We'll let you go real soon. I'm sorry, but in Modern Romance, there's like it felt to me at the time like a 10-minute scene where he's editing a movie or he's doing the sound effects in a movie or whatever it is.
Yeah, a movie with George Kennedy in it.
And I'm just like,
Ooh.
I'm like, what? Is this movie about a modern romance or is it about like watching an editing room? Am I wrong? Wasn't that scene way too long?
And another thing I love about Modern Romance is the whole first half of the movie is basically a one-man show where it's like he's been dumped and it's just like you're following him on his daily ritual. Like nothing happens in it. He's just like, okay, now I'm going to try to exercise. And you see him failing at exercising. Oh, now I'm going to do this. You see him failing at that. Just one thing after another. Like the plot doesn't even kick in until halfway through the movie.
And
so cool.
In Taxi Driver, is there any reason to believe Sybil Shepherd would agree to go for pie with Robert De Niro, let alone go to the movies with them?
Well, I know that you've written a whole song about this. I know that you're very, you don't believe it would ever happen. I think it would happen. I think I think De Niro has a particular charisma to him, and I think, under the right circumstances, maybe a bold gesture like that, a shooting your shot like that would be effective, particularly if you're surrounded all day by Albert Brooks as like the beta male.
I so identified with Albert Brooks in that scene. I'm like, Sybil, why won't you go to get pie with me, Charlie? Do you believe that, Charlie? That scene?
I agree with you, Farley. I don't think she would.
There's no way. The whole movie, like the crux of the movie, is that she goes out to pie with him, and no one's talking about it. Will, no one's talking about it.
I think what you guys fail to understand, maybe you haven't learned it, is that life isn't fair.
A guy, a creepy taxi driver, walks into I don't know. Maybe New York in the 70s was a different kind of place. Okay, two more. Best Kubrick movie.
Barry Lyndon.
Bing.
Ooh, nice.
Not necessarily the one I would watch right now, though.
You were right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that is the best. Barry. I'm glad that these movies have correct answers. Charlie, your thoughts?
I saw Barry Lyndon at the Academy with the intermission in a freshly struck print. Best movie experience of my life.
I love Barry Lyndon. I could watch it every day.
Here, yeah. Like it was that when some of the shots came on, you had to become vocal and say, I had to say, wow, or I almost cursed. I'd say like, dang, because it was that amazing looking, and that dose of comedy that Kubrick gives is what I need. He's so funny.
The whole movie is funny. That's the trick, Will.
It's so funny, and that's what Charlie's need.
Okay, last thing, I promise.
You don't necessarily anticipate it. I think that. Sure.
No. Keep saying your thing.
Right? Yeah. People don't talk about.
I was just gonna say. I think Barry Lyndon was actually the last one of his that I ever saw. Yeah.
Ah.
Well, I was like
because I was like putting it off. I thought it'd be boring.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
The time period.
Amen. Okay, last question. Eyes Wide Shut. What's going on? What's going on there? Is it possible, Will, that in the last scene in the toy store that they're actually while they're talking about toys, their daughter is being taken away by the cult? Have you ever considered that option?
I hadn't considered it, but I think it's very possible.
Okay, look into it, Will. Look into it. Watch that scene again, and you'll notice there's these two guys in the background as Nicole and Tom are having their discussion, two guys who look very much like guys that you see earlier in the movie, and they're guiding the little girl away. Oh, my God.
It's crazy.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm actually a little afraid to watch it again now.
And especially given what we know about the terrifying practices of the elites around us, that movie is more and more timely.
I mean, I think I like the movie a lot more now that I know who Jeffrey Epstein is, for sure.
Don't you feel that Kubrick knew who Jeffrey Epstein was when he made that movie?
I think he probably did. I don't know if his name was on the flight logs, but I think he probably at least knew a guy who knew a guy who knew him. Yeah.
And it's like, oh my, like the first time I watched that movie, I'm like, yeah, and then there's this weird like cult thing happening, and it almost just like the whole movie's dreamlike, so it just like goes over your head. But then the more you think of it, it's like, oh, the movie's only about that, you know?
Oh yeah, and the first time I saw it, I remember thinking, well, I don't know, this orgy scene, it looks a little implausible.
Yeah.
But now it's the most plausible thing about that.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, it's aged so well.
Yeah.
It was a trip to go see that. I mean, there was all the lead up with knowing that he didn't finish it and stuff. But for me, the feeling that these were the last, scenes and last images of Kubrick I was going to see, and knowing it was like bittersweet. But I liked it out of the gate. I was just like in awe. I was like, I don't know if I'll get to see a movie that much to wrap my head around again in the theater in my life.
It's just crazy that movie played in theaters. That was in like 3,000 theaters across the country.
Yeah, at the mall.
I feel like it would never happen again.
Yeah.
No coincidence, he shows it to big shot film people, and then he mysteriously dies. And then they re-edit his movie. I bet you he revealed a lot more than just that. But I'm a major conspiracy theorist. We can have a different episode about that.
Do you think he faked the moon landing too?
Yes. Unequivocally. What does unequivocally mean? Did I use that right, Charlie?
Without a doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, you want it to mean.
Whatever. What do people do when they deny? They like those statements are unequivocally false. Is that what they always say?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, categorically. I categorically deny all these. I love that one. All right, Charlie, wrap us up.
I don't think I asked Will. This is kind of an easy-ish one, I guess. But favorite like film books or ones that you turn to, or something you used to get from the library, like see the pictures of, if there was something like that sort of inspired you, or that you would just, when you're getting into film, like devoured these books, or.
Well, there are a lot of books, but I'll say two that like I'll have as like a counterpoint. At the library, I used to love reading the 50 Worst Films of All Time by the Medved brothers, which has probably a bad legacy, I would say. I think it's like not a very good book, but like it was so exciting to read that book, and just like, because all these chapters seemed like windows into another world. I mean, actually, when you look at that book now, like most of those are just movies that they saw on late night TV, like just mediocre movies that they watched to meet the deadline. Right. But there were some in there like Ega or Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, or Robot Monster, that seemed so exciting. But then probably the other one that would have been really big for me was the Psychotronic Encyclopedia and the Psychotronic Video Guide. Did you guys ever read those books by Michael J. Weldon?
I did, yeah. I didn't own it, but I would flip through it. And yes, I think it's so inspiring, especially when you have movies like, I guess, like A Robot Monster, or It Conquered the World, or Monster from the Surf, beach, what's it also known as? Beach Party Girls and the Monster, whatever.
Horror at Party Beach. Is that
that's a different one. That's a different one. But Horror at Party Beach is great too. But just seeing that creature, you see the creature in a still, and you think, oh my God, someone made a whole movie with this title and with this monster, and it just seeing the still is so inspiring. And then kind of at that time also, I guess, having it maybe be a little hard to track down, it made these movies like legendary in your mind when you're growing up.
Yeah, kids don't have that today anymore, and I mean, it's probably a good thing, but I almost feel bad that they didn't have that. They don't have that experience of like wanting to see a movie for 10 years and then finally being able to see it. Yeah. But I think the Psychotronic book was important for me because when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I'm not sure I really had language to appreciate some of these movies aside from so bad it's good. And something like the Psychotronic book pointed to a different kind of appreciation.
Yeah.
Well, folks, he's a public intellectual. He's a man of letters. He's the co-host of the Important Cinema Club. I recommend it highly because you feel like you're learning about stuff, but you're learning about it from people who have a really good sense of humor about it. So it's not too high, not too low. It's right where you want it. And so many times after listening to you guys, I want to dig deeper into whatever the subject is, and that's a great feeling to just suddenly be so curious about something that you hadn't otherwise been thinking of. So keep up the good work, and listeners, check out Will's show. Thanks, Will.
Thank you, gentlemen. Big
Peace.
fan.